There's something almost magical about sound that we've stopped noticing. It passes through us every second of our lives. Invisible waves traveling at hundreds of miles per hour, vibrating against our eardrums, echoing inside our chests, and yet most of us experience it as background noise. We walk past conversations without hearing them. We listen to music without feeling the physics of it. We go our whole lives surrounded by forces we barely acknowledge exist. But sound is not just a sensation. It's actually a physical event. A chain reaction of energy moving through matter, shaping the world around us in ways that are profound and mostly unnoticed. When you understand what sound really is, everything changes. Let me take you somewhere most people never go, the space between hearing and understanding. Because there's a whole physics to sound that we ignore, and when you pay attention, it starts explaining things about life, about connection, about yourself that you've been wondering about for a long time. Sound is fundamentally vibration. That simple fact carries more meaning than most people realize. Every note of music, every word spoken in love or anger, every heartbeat echoing through bone. These are all disturbances rippling outward from their source, pushing and pulling at the molecules around them. A guitar string doesn't just make a sound. It physically kicks air molecules forward, which kick their neighbors forward, and that energy travels outward as a wave, like ripples across a pond except in every direction, simultaneously, through 3 dimensions of space. The speed depends entirely on what it's traveling through. In air at room temperature, sound moves at roughly 760 miles per hour. But push harder through water, and you're suddenly moving over 3,400 feet per second. Through steel, almost 19,500 feet per second. The medium matters profoundly. Sound is not a solitary thing. It's always in relationship with what surrounds it. This tells us something about ourselves, doesn't it? About how we carry our energy through the world. When you speak to someone who is closed off, when your words meet resistance, you'll notice they seem heavier, harder to land. But when you speak into a heart that's open and receptive, your voice carries differently. Not metaphorically, literally. There's a physics to being heard. Resonance takes us deeper still. Every object in existence has natural frequencies at which it prefers to vibrate. These are the notes an object wants to sing if you give it permission. A wine glass sitting on a table is essentially humming with potential energy, waiting for the right frequency to arrive so it can finally let go and show what it's made of. When someone sings a note that matches the resonant frequency of a glass, something extraordinary happens. The tiny vibrations from their voice begin to reinforce each other inside the glass's structure until eventually, sometimes after seconds, sometimes only minutes, the glass literally shatters. Not because the singer is angry at it, not because they're attacking it, but because they finally found its language. Resonance is what we call this phenomenon in physics. When an external vibration matches something's internal preference for frequency, and energy builds up until transformation becomes unavoidable. We hear it as a sustained tone that grows louder. An engineer hears it as structural failure. A musician calls it harmony. But they're all pointing at the same invisible truth. Everything has its own preferred way of vibrating. And when someone finally speaks in that language, everything changes. Think about your own relationships with this lens for a moment. When you find yourself constantly exhausted around certain people, not because anything terrible is happening but simply because something doesn't land right between you, that's often resonance misalignment. The frequencies aren't matching. Your energy isn't reinforcing itself in that space. It's fighting against the natural frequency of the connection. But when you're with someone who truly resonates, you feel it immediately, don't you? There's a physical lightness to conversations. Ideas arrive fully formed and supported. Emotions flow without effort. You finish each other's thoughts not because you've practiced, but because your internal frequencies are already aligned. The energy reinforces itself and creates something larger than what either of you brought alone. This is what the physics of sound teaches us. That resonance isn't about being identical, it's about finding frequency harmony. There's another phenomenon in acoustics called standing waves, and it reveals something beautiful about how we shape our own lives. When 2 sound waves traveling in opposite directions meet at certain frequencies, They can create a pattern where some points appear completely still while others vibrate intensely. This is what happens inside your voice when you speak. Sound reflects off the walls of your mouth and throat, creating interference patterns that give every word its unique color and texture. The same voice sounds different depending on whether you're speaking in an empty room or a crowded one. Standing waves are standing still while moving forward simultaneously, a paradox that mirrors so much of what it means to grow. We all have frequencies we repeat constantly. The ways we respond to stress, the rhythms of our self-talk, the patterns of how we show up for other people. Most of these patterns are invisible to us because they're too familiar. But when someone finally speaks a word that interrupts them, when life introduces friction that forces reflection, they can become aware of their own standing wave and choose whether to change it or honor it. The Doppler effect gives us another lens, one I think about often during quiet drives through the evening. As an ambulance approaches you from behind, its siren sounds higher pitched than when it passes and moves away, because the sound waves are compressed in front of the vehicle and stretched behind it. The frequency changes depending on your position relative to what's moving toward or away from you. I've come to think about how often this happens emotionally without us noticing. People who have been close to us for years suddenly feel unfamiliar not because they changed but because we moved. Or we find ourselves unable to hear someone clearly not because their message is wrong, but because our perspective shifted and the waves are now arriving stretched out differently than before. The Doppler effect doesn't judge. It simply describes what happens when distance changes between sender and receiver. And here's something most people don't know. Sound travels through bone as well as air. When you speak to yourself in your head, when you have an internal conversation, you're hearing it not just through external waves but through the bones of your skull vibrating against your inner ear. This is why your own voice sounds deeper to you than it does on a recording. The recording only captures air-conducted sound, missing all the bone resonance that makes your voice feel like home inside your head. Think about what this means for self-talk. When you speak kindly to yourself internally, you're not just thinking words, you're literally vibrating them through your own structure and feeling them echo back at you with warmth and familiarity. The physics is real. How we talk to ourselves matters physically, not just emotionally but in the literal sense of how sound waves travel through the architecture of our bodies. Infrasound, the frequencies below what humans can hear, is another invisible layer most people ignore completely. Dogs hear it. Elephants communicate with it across miles. Whales carry messages across entire oceans using frequencies that pass through water undisturbed for hundreds of miles, bouncing off layers of ocean that would stop a human voice dead in its tracks. There's also ultrasound, frequencies we've trained ourselves not to notice, and inside our own bodies, there are millions of tiny vibrations happening constantly that we feel as sensations rather than sounds. Blood flowing through capillaries, muscle fibers contracting and releasing, the electrical signals jumping between neurons in patterns so precise they create everything from memory formation to emotional response. All this invisible activity is real. It's not imagined or metaphorical. Sound physics tells us that nothing happens without vibration at some level, even if our ears aren't built to hear it. The universe itself vibrates, from quantum particles oscillating through energy states to galaxies rotating on their axes for billions of years. We're literally surrounded by music we've been taught to ignore because we don't have the right instruments to play it. Which brings me back to something I want you to consider, whether you came here looking for physics or something deeper. There's a physics to being truly heard that most people never pause long enough to appreciate. When someone finally listens, really listens, you can feel your own internal standing waves shift and settle into new patterns. Ideas arrive lighter. Emotions move through without getting stuck. The frequency of the conversation matches something inside you that was waiting to be recognized. And when you become a better listener yourself, which is really just learning how to tune your own resonance, everything changes in ways physics can describe but poetry can only point toward. You start hearing conversations before they're spoken. The slight tension behind someone's smile, the frequency of hesitation in their pause between sentences, the vibration underneath words that means something different than what those words say aloud. The most beautiful thing about sound is that it always seeks its medium. It doesn't try to force itself through walls or pretend not to need anyone to carry it along. Sound acknowledges the medium as part of itself. Without air, without water, without bone and wood and metal and skin, sound simply cannot exist. This humility in physics should comfort us. We are never alone in what we're carrying because everything travels together with something else. So I'll leave you here with this thought before we go. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up to the world of sound again, the alarm clock, distant traffic, someone breathing near you, don't just hear it. Feel the physics behind it. Notice how energy moves through space and matter without asking permission from anyone. Watch how resonance builds until something transforms. Pay attention to what frequency is traveling toward or away from you right now in your life, in your relationships, in your own internal conversation. Sound has been speaking to us all along, quietly, invisibly, faithfully, carrying our words and music and heartbeats through the invisible architecture of matter that holds everything together. And if we just slow down enough to listen past what our ears were built for, into the physics of resonance and standing waves and bone conduction and frequency alignment, we might finally hear ourselves in a way that changes everything.